You're listening to the Nerd to Know Media Network. Join us at nerdtoknowmedia.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it's now time for our main event. Take a trip back in time to the golden era of the wrestling world with your host, Chris Tetrold Blade. Welcome to Once Upon a Turnbuckle.
Welcome to another very special edition of Once Upon a Turnbuckle, and I'm thrilled to say that I am now kicking off another little mini spotlight series where I get to delve into another gem in the British wrestling industry at the moment, with something a little closer to home now. And I'm thrilled for the first episode to welcome along not only one of the top stars, but also one of the co-directors of Reach Wrestling and a third of the House of Cards, the man himself, Jason King. How you doing, mate?
Very good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, not bad, mate. Not bad, thank you. Yeah, thank you for coming along. This is it's something that I've been looking forward to doing. Thankfully, we're getting to do it a little bit more ahead of time than I'd planned. I got to experience Reach Wrestling in person for myself recently at one of your shows.
Tavistock?
It was, and I was blown away. Really, it was a fantastic night. You know, the roster was really strong. So I'm really
your first Reach show, was it?
It was, yeah, because I spoke to Joel Redman earlier in the year, and sort of he mentioned in that interview about Reach, and I must admit, my head had been in the sand for a few years, really, since my last wrestling show, which was Pro Wrestling Pride down here. I hadn't really explored anything. I hadn't really kept up with it. So, you know, off the back of that, I found out about you guys. I had Echo read along as well, and knew that after that I needed to get out there and actually experience it. And you know, it was top notch. And I'm not just saying that, it was fantastic. So
I'm glad.
Looking forward to delving into more behind, you know, Reach Wrestling itself, but really to start with yourself, winding it right back to the beginning if we can. Where did your relationship with wrestling start in particular? Sort of, when did you first discover it for yourself?
So I think as a kid, right, I just loved sport. Me and my brother, we were just big sport fans. So anything sport related, we loved. And one day my dad brings home like a VHS. Now, I don't know how old you are, but it's weird. Yeah. I say VHS to some of the guys that are training school now, and they look at me like, what the fuck is he talking about?
No. I grew up with them. My room was full of them. Yeah,
right. So brought home like a video VHS, and the main event was WrestleMania 12, and it's the main event Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, right? Yeah. And most sports I enjoyed as a kid, but with wrestling, something different happened. I was just like, I could miss a football match or a game of cricket or a game of golf, and it wasn't the worst thing in the world. Like, I'd watch it if I could, but if I missed it, it wasn't going to kill me. But I was sat in front of the TV for 3 hours watching this WrestleMania show, not knowing what WrestleMania was, not really knowing what wrestling was, but just blown away by the lights and these massive men, these huge characters, right? Like, I mean, football had like Eric Cantona, right? He's like one character, but everybody else was a sportsman. This thing had, 50 different, like, larger than life, crazy ass men that appeared to be beating the shit out of each other, right? And you get main event of Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. And where I'm from, it's going to sound really stupid, but growing up, this is how it was. Men didn't have long hair. A long-haired man was like a long-haired man was homosexual. I'm just going to be straight up, right? That's where I grew up. Now that's narrow-minded in today's world, but this was 30 years ago we're talking. Yeah. So a long-haired man was I realize how stupid that sounds now. Some people hear that and say, you can't say that, but that's what it was 30 years ago, right? Yeah. So Bret Hart comes down to the ring, long black hair, these sunglasses indoors, which blows my mind as a kid. Why has he got sunglasses on? And he's wearing pink as well. And I'm like, there's a grown-ass man with long hair wearing pink.
Real men wear pink.
Well, yeah, but see, I don't know that 4 years old or 5 years, whatever I was at the time, right? But then then of course he's kicking everybody's ass, or he's kicking Shawn Michaels' ass, and I'm just like, it was such like a mind trip for a kid. Like I just could not take my eyes off the TV, because you watch this wrestling, and I'm like, okay, football's good, and darts and golf and cricket, but rugby, but nothing is like this. This thing is a whole new world, like a whole, like, grown, and they're all massive. All these humongous men beating the shit out of each other. And I just think my mind as a kid was just blown away. It's just too much to understand, to take in. As soon as I'd seen one event, I'm turning to my dad, said, Dad, I got to see this. What is this? I need more of this wrestling. And he's laughing, you know what that wrestling is, don't you, but it's all fake. I'm looking my dad in the eye thinking, he's trying to trick me. He's tricking me. There's no way that stuff, the way they kick each other, the punches. I'm like, I'm thinking to myself.
So you had that from day one. Took me about 4 or 5 years for anyone to say that to me.
But I didn't believe him. I thought he's winding me up. My dad's a bit of a joker, so I just assume he's winding me up. I'm looking at my dad, 5'6", and not the greatest looking athlete in the world at this stage of his life, and I'm looking at Bret Hart with the long black hair and the pink and black, and I'm going, my dad's jealous, isn't he? I get it. I'm thinking he's jealous because these guys is in the ring, great. As far as I'm concerned, best looking athletes in the world. And I'm like, oh yeah, he's jealous because they're telling me it's fake. I'm watching that match going, oh goodness, but what are you talking about? You got a clue, Dad. I'm thinking I know it all, Took me probably 10 years, maybe 8 years before I even realized. People started saying, you understand, when I was in the high school, middle school, whatever it was, but it's not real. Once I started to hear that more and more, I was like, again, another mind blow for me. I was like, I didn't understand. I was just like, how can this be what people are saying it is? That's probably what got me into the business, was the understanding of what we do. As I got older, more, a bit wiser, I was like, now I'm even more fascinated. How they do this stuff. Fascinating to me.
Yeah, and that's what's kept me. I've gone through spells over the years where there was a big gap of about 10 or 15 years where I didn't keep up with wrestling at all. I did kind of walk away from it. Other things happened, but it's always been there. And I think as you get older, you appreciate it more. I've never been in the ring. I've not done anything, physically involved in it, but it's you get interested in the inner workings of it, because there's a hell of a job that goes on behind the scenes.
Oh yes.
So about WrestleMania 12, I've said on this a few times before, that is my favorite match ever. Was really? Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels. I was a massive fan of both at the time, and that really cemented. That whole boyhood dream angle they had going on with that, I thought was very magic. So cool. Yeah, it's very good storytelling. They just know how to. The WWE are the best in the world. Like, I know we could go in for hours about who likes what company and everything, but if we look at the facts, I think the WWE are the best in the world. But what we do, and I know you're going to get people hear this and be like, "This idiot, he should be watching AEW, New Japan, or whatever they like." We just, opinions aside, the facts really, as a business and as a product, there's nothing better. That they stand up as a brand against any other brand in the world. It's not in just sport, but in entertainment. It's a global brand, and when they do it right, things like you say, the Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart stuff, or the Undertaker. You look at these characters. There's nothing in the world quite like what they bring you. We've all got memories as a kid of somebody, that's like a character we've either fallen in love with or we've hated. Heels that you hate, but as you get older, you realize, oh, he's not so bad. Oh, I really hate it. Well, they were just really good at that.
There you go, right?
Yeah, that's it. You hated them, so job done.
I don't know if you ever listened to Jeff Jarrett's got a podcast. He's come out like recently.
I haven't. I must admit, I've never listened to it. He's one of those that I did follow him for a little bit, but I haven't.
He's a good example, right, of a guy where I always just thought, oh, he's a jackass. Always growing up or whatever. Oh, Jeff Jarrett's a jackass. He's a complete. But I've been listening to his podcast and it's blown my mind. Some of the things that he said about his time in WWE and WCW and TNA, and you've realised. He's a third generation promoter. His grandma was a promoter. His father was a promoter. And you listen to some of the decisions he made. You start to realize, you weren't a bad guy at all.
No,
like you're just a really good hero. Because I just always assumed this guy's it. Even as a grown man, I was like, he's a dickhead, this guy.
Yeah.
Then you hear him talking, he explains his decisions on his podcast, and you sort of realize this is a really smart man that understands our business, very switched on, and just played his role kind of perfectly, really.
Yeah.
But people like me were like, jackass.
Yeah, he got a bad rep, I think, when he went to WCW, and then they were putting the belt on him all the time, and then he had TNA where he was doing it to himself and everything. Yeah. I think people just started hating on him just because of who he was. But yeah, I got to meet him when he was down in Exeter a few years ago, and what I saw of him, he's a lovely guy. It's he's very, very. I think the smartest minds, some of the smartest minds, do end up being the best heels. I mean, Paul Heyman, I think, is way up there for me as well. So anyway,
I think it's a little bit harder to be a heel. I think it takes a little bit more. Usually.
Yeah.
So I think those that understand the bit better tend to flourish in that role a little more.
And obviously, we'll get to sort of where you are as a performer at the moment, in a little bit. But what I've seen of you as well, your persona is quite. It's almost like an old school heel kind of feel to it, and it's you're not outlandish with it or anything. You're just somebody that people will want to hate. Not being funny, with the greatest of respect.
I think you're spot on. I'm glad to hear it, because that means I'm doing my job.
Yeah. Because
the reality of the situation is, like, especially in Reach, I wouldn't say it's easier for me, but it's not a difficult story to tell. If I'm the boss, which I am, they all know I own Reach, and I keep making decisions that benefit me or the guys and girls that team with me, and I'm putting it to the baby faces, the good guys all the time, and then I come out usually dressed, not to toot my own horn, but usually dressed better than most other people come to our shows, and I'm smug too. I can be smug. So I can see where they're looking at me going, this guy's a motherfucker. And then they see me on a poster. They see me on a poster. They see me in a main event. And I'm like, okay, well, what are you going to do? Boo me? You're going to stop coming to the show? No. Because you're going to want to see me get my ass kicked. So I look at those heels of the yesteryear. Today's heels are a little bit different. But a good character heel is somebody that can really draw the people in, right? And like you say, make it easy to dislike. Well, it's not that difficult to dislike me when I get talking. Like I come across a little bit arrogant, a little bit cocky and smug, but I am who I am. You know what I mean? There's people that love me for me. There's people that don't like me. But if I know that they're not going to like me just by the way I dress and the way I talk, I'm always turning it up to 10 and let's see what happens. Let's sell some tickets. You know what I mean?
Is there anyone in particular that you grew up watching that you've drawn inspiration from in, how you portray yourself in the ring?
I watched Nick Bockwinkel. He was a good champion. So I never got to see Buddy Rogers, but I was told that he was pretty good. But I watched Nick Bockwinkel, and I watched a lot of Ric Flair. And a lot of what I watched Ric Flair do was fascinating to me, because the way I hear one of the dumbest fucking things, I hope you don't mind, I swear.
No, go ahead.
I can't pretend, it's just going to come out. So Ric Flair, I would hear, and one of the dumbest things I've ever heard in wrestling is people say, Flair has the same match all the time. I think that's really stupid. It's a really narrow-minded comment to make. Ric Flair was the world champion when being a world champion meant something, and the world champion traveled the world, which is what he did. I think his best story is one month he did something like 25 days out of 30, and he'd wrestle for an hour every night. And he went all around the world. He went, to the Carolinas to wrestle in America. And then, of course, it would be like go to Mexico, then he'd fly over to Japan, come back to America, he'd go to Europe. And he did that. That was when he was the world champion. He was the real world champion. And I think I watch his matches, and the fact he could wrestle for an hour a night, 2 weeks in a row, no nights off. And the fact that he could have matches that were entertaining, that most importantly, and this is what a lot of people forget, is still drew the people in, still drew fans in to watch him. Fans wanted to pay to see this man lose, that constantly wanted to see this guy get his ass kicked. And what is a lost art in our business is the understanding that you're not doing it for each other. I'm not trying to get Jason King, or everyone watch Jason King do Jason King stuff. I've got to listen to those people that are paid to see me. And saying Ric Flair at the same match is like saying Stone Cold Steve Austin wasn't all that popular. It was just stupid. It's just really stupid. It's an uneducated comment. Here's a guy that could be world champion 16 times across 3 different companies, was able to travel the entire globe for years on end, the entire globe, considered by everybody in the business the best ever. I mean, what more do you want?
Exactly. It's not just one man's opinion, is it? This is something like 30, 40 years worth.
Yeah, and I'd watch his style and just kind of see certain sequences he'd do, and I thought, well, I can probably tailor that a little bit and tailor that a little bit, and I know how I talk and how I carry myself, and I thought, well, I'm pretty sure I can. And then I'd watch Nick Bockwinkel, some of his promos. He'd say these ridiculously long words, and he'd say things that didn't make any sense, but no one understood him anyway. He just had a nice suit and a title belt, and everyone was like, "Oh, dickhead!" Like, and I thought, okay, we can put some of that in there. And I watched Jerry Lawler, who, I mean, wrestling Jerry Lawler for an hour would be like, I mean, that guy, he's a master. People will sleep on Jerry Lawler, not knowing how good he is. Yeah. If you really understand him, I think if you watch Jerry Lawler, you'll see just how talented that guy is. He made things really mean something in a time when, again, selling meant something. Yeah. What it means to sell. He is a master. So I'd watch some of his movements, the way he would move around the ring, and I was like, I can try some of that. I mean, I'm not Jerry Lawler, but I would watch and say, yeah, I reckon I can do some of that stuff. Cool. So those were the kind of guys, good heels.
That's good. I mean, that's when it was still an art form. You're right. I've said it many times myself. There has been this lull in the middle where several key things seem to have fallen away in the industry, and it's nice to see some of them come back. Jerry Lawler was one, actually. You just mentioned him. I was one of those that grew up in an era where, when he was in the WWF, he was more of a comedy value, and it wasn't until later that I went back and I realized just how people kept on about how good he was, and I was like, he's rubbish, he's going up against people like Billy the Clown and whatever, and it's you have to go back to before he was there. How many people went through the WWF and kind of their careers sort of, their legacies almost took a dip because of what
I think for a lot of guys that came through, I think with the WWE, it's what it looks like to me is it's very Vince. I've never met Vince McMahon, but it feels very like he's the boss. Clearly, he runs the company, and it feels very much like if it's not Vince's idea, then it doesn't count. There's a lot of this feeling that you watch wrestlers that come through that have been big stars elsewhere. You'll see him change their name, or he'll change their something enough so that it's like, well, WWE owns this now, which is smart business. Not what fans want to hear, because they want to say, the old bastard Vince McMahon ain't got it. You don't know what he's doing. I hear that all the time. He's making money off what he creates. So if you look at how he changed Dusty Rhodes when he came in, Dusty Rhodes was perfectly fine, but he had to change Dusty Rhodes. Or Jerry Lawler was perfectly fine making money in Memphis, making good money in Memphis, but he has to bring him in and make him a joke character and everything. There's a lot of guys in our closer to this era that you'll see that will come in and they'll change their name, or there's something about them, and it's so that they can own it. It's a business, it's so that they can say, this was WWE created. This was not created elsewhere by anybody else. It's irrelevant what you've done before. He calls it the WWE universe. I mean, it's really very it's all the signs are all there,
Yeah, it's a different world, isn't it? You just step in
there, and it's his world. Yeah. It's that man. Who's made more money pro wrestling than anybody that's ever walked God's green earth, times by about 5, and people still to this day say you don't know what he's doing. And when I hear that, I'm just like, come on, like you guys not quite with it.
I have used the term. I think some of the decisions which are flying around lately, I've called him senile, probably.
No, have you?
Just literally. I mean, I can't think exactly what it was. It came up in one conversation that I was having with someone, and I could just see it going too much in another direction. I thought, this isn't the Vince McMahon. This isn't the WWF I grew up with. Obviously, very biased to a particular era. I don't like change, I suppose. It fits the new generation, but each to their own. That's it. I think they've got healthy competition back again, which he hasn't had for about 20 years. Do
you think AEW a competition for WWE?
I think it's the most they've had certainly since WCW, I feel. I don't know. It might not be, a bit like TNA, I suppose, Impact. They were knocking on the door back along, and then it didn't really last. They lost momentum and whatever. It could end like that. I don't know. I think at the moment, it's healthier competition than I've seen for a long time. So
I think it's enough to probably make. It's probably enough to make someone in WWE go, "Oh, yeah." That's, you can't ignore what's going on over there. No. We create this WWE world, right? This WWE universe, and all there is WWE. But I think realistically, you kind of can't ignore it. Like, yeah, but there's definitely something there. You know what I mean? I think AEW's kind of got that feel about it, right?
People have got a choice now. I mean, they have had, but you've always known the WWE was like way ahead, and what they were doing was still way ahead. My opinion, I feel that they've stalled a little bit, and AEW's gathered steam, and it's probably getting a little bit, a little bit touchy. Might not last, but it's fun. So,
got a lot of money. Guy that owns the company, so he's got deep pockets, isn't he? So
yeah, exactly. And that's the one argument I think that could be their undoing is a bit like Premier League football clubs that just throw money at it. Yeah, success doesn't last. We'll see, but it's good for now. So, going back then to obviously, back when you first discovered wrestling, then when was it that you seriously started to think for yourself, I want to get in and do this myself? And sort of, where did your journey as a wrestler start?
I think it was probably about 18, and it was in 2006. I just started lifting weights because I told myself, I was like, okay, all these wrestlers are massive, and I wasn't. I was like 10 stone. So I just thought, okay, I wasn't one of these like bodybuilder guys because I was insecure or anything like that. I wasn't even that good an athlete. I was just someone that was like, okay, well, suppose you got to get bigger, right? And I was like, I don't even know how to what was it get bigger even mean? But like most people, I went out and bought some muscle and fitness magazines and flex magazines, and I became a fan of bodybuilding and was like, okay, it's time for me to lift some weights, right? So I had a friend who was a bodybuilder, so he helped me out in the beginning. And I was just like, okay, if I'm gonna one day do this wrestling, then I told myself, at least be ready for when you find, however you break in. I had no idea. You break into a wrestling squad. I didn't even know British wrestling was a thing. I had no idea. So I started going to the gym, and as luck would have it, I saw something called Channel 427, which was the Total Wrestling channel, it was called, on Sky. I found that, and it had everything. It had 1PW, they were called. It had TNA, it had Ring of Honor, it had CZW, it had FWA, it had IPW, Irish Whip Wrestling, all these different companies. And I was just suddenly like, wait a minute, there's wrestling in the UK. There were like, and it had like promos on the page for like Doug Williams, Johnny Storm, and Jody Fleisch. And I was just like, wow, like there are like, to me, Johnny Storm, Jody Fleisch, Doug Williams, they were as big a stars as Triple H, because I was just like the wrestlers on TV. You know, I didn't know like what the levels of success were. I was just like, wow, wrestling on TV. So then I went searching I typed in like British Wrestling School in England, and I think we got NWA Hammerlock was around at the time, but that was like somewhere up country. I can't remember. My friend.
Yeah, I think I remember I saw way back. Yeah, they were advertised, and that was in Kent. It was still miles away from me. So yeah.
For sure, right? I was living in Exeter at the time, so Kent may as well have been New Zealand, because I didn't drive at that point, so I didn't know what, I couldn't have got to Kent even if I tried. But so then I was able to find a local school in a place called Brixham, which is effectively, I don't know, 20 miles down the road. So me and two friends, we paid a tenner and turned up and went to this one session, and it was, I thought it was amazing because I didn't know any different. I look back now, it's fucking shit, but I didn't know any different. I really didn't know. So I was just over the moon, like, oh my God, I've been in a ring with real wrestlers. I mean, these guys were backyarders, but to me, not knowing any different, I'd done it. I had got in a wrestling, seeing a live wrestling ring, setting up a live wrestling ring. When you see one for the first time, it always appears bigger than it really is, because you see it on TV and everything. To see one live, I'm 18 years old, and I was just like, all these thoughts going over my head: Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, Stone Cold Steve Austin. I'm like, and now me. Like, they did a show like that night in front of something like, I don't know, 10 people. But as far as I was concerned, we were one step from the WWE. Do you know what I mean? I was just like, it was mad. They had title belts that were like old WWF replica belts, but I just looked at that belt and was like, I want to win that. Like, I had no idea, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, because to me, that was like, these guys are having real matches, and I just trained with them 2 hours ago, and it was, it's almost like magic to me. And I think I did like 2 sessions. Then I figured out pretty quickly. I was like, oh, okay, these guys probably aren't quite what I'm looking for. The more wrestling I watched, the more I was kind of like, I need to pick my moment and probably find something a little different. So I opted not to go back there. And then I found there was a company called Varsity Pro Wrestling when I was 21. So 3 years later, they came to Exmouth, which is about 12 miles from Exeter. They had a live show with Billy Gunn on it. And I spoke to the guy that ran the company at the time. This guy called the UK Kid. I spoke to him after the show and said, look, I really love to try wrestling. I've done a couple of training sessions before. Told him the name of the coach at the time, and he laughed. And I was like, I don't understand. And he just started opening up, told me a few things, and I was like, okay, right. And I thought, now this guy, I read in what they call it, like the manual that came with the show, the program, said he was trained by Shawn Michaels. Yes. Straight away, I was like, wait a minute. You know, in my head, I was like, he was trained by Shawn Michaels. So if he trains me, I can say I was kind of trained by Shawn. I was an idiot. I was kind of trained by Shawn Michaels. More honestly, but that's like my mindset, right? So I was badgering this guy, emailing him constantly about opening a training school, and he was in Portsmouth, which again may as well have been, you know, Australia, because I didn't know where Portsmouth was. I had no idea. I only knew Portsmouth because of the football team, but I didn't know where it was, you know. And one day he was like, look, I'm opening a school, you know, in 3 weeks' time. If you can get here, this is the cost. This is, you know, I was like, right, this is the guy who was trained by Shawn Michaels. This feels more realistic. So I sort of begged, borrowed, and stealed, and found a way to get there. And I was able to get there I think I trained there for about 8 months. I had 3 matches in the end. So I met like Bob Holly. That was really cool. Like D'Lo Brown. And it was insanely cool. Like really, it's like a really valuable learning experience when I was 21. But I think I ran out of money or something. And I burnt out very fast. And I don't think I was mature enough at the time at 21 to realize it was a lifestyle choice. And what I needed really was not necessarily a better coach, because he's very knowledgeable, but I needed a different kind of coach that could have said to me, look, stick with this thing. Like you've got something here. You can do this. You just need to, but I just don't think at the time I was ready to, it wasn't the right, I guess, coaching for me. It was good coaching. I can't look back and say it was bad. This guy's extremely knowledgeable, and I still talk to him today. He's a great guy. He's a bit of an asshole, but he's a good guy in a sense, I guess, in his own way. But it didn't fit me. And I knew, I was like, I can't do this wrestling. This ain't going to work out for me. So after all those years of like wanting to wrestle, I left, and I think 6 years went by, about 6-7 years. And I started a job in an office when I was 27. And I met on the first day in this office job. Everybody sat around, and we got like little name tags, and the guy taking the session just says, you got to say who you are, your hobbies, all this kind of business. He says, and an interesting fact about yourself. And so when it was my turn, I just said an interesting fact. I said, I used to be a professional wrestler. And the whole session stopped for like 20 minutes. Everybody was just asking me questions like, how do you do this? And what is this? and I'd not given wrestling a thought in like 6 years, because I'd gone on and done different things in my life. I'd in my mind grown up. Like that was a thing I did when I was 21. I was being silly. I was never going to wrestle. That's like, you tried it, you were don't be stupid, you grow out of that shit. But for 20 minutes, people were all asking me, and what about this? And what about this? And then for the following days and weeks, people would come up to me and say, hey, so is it real? Like, what are you? And I was like, it started making me think of wrestling again. And I was like, does this many people like? I was like, wrestling's like, I wasn't watching it at the time or anything. I couldn't tell you who the heavyweight champion was or nothing. I knew what WWE was, but I didn't know who was on top. I had no idea. And I was just like, are these guys really like? I was like, sounds a bit stupid. In my head, I was like, they still like wrestling.
People's curiosity, I think, even if you're not for years and years, even if you're not a fan of wrestling, you know about it. And I think there's always these same questions that come up. People are interested enough to ask and want to know more. So, yeah.
And I think for me, I still felt the need to defend it. It was weird. Like they'd say like, oh, is it fake, is it? And I said, what do you mean? And I'd be like defensive straight away. And I'd tell myself, what are you doing? It's not your bag. That's someone else's problem. But then I would lay there at night and I'd be like, well, what if you just like tried a training session again? I was like, what if you just went back, you find a school, did one session, see what you thought. And that went on for about a month in my head. For about a month, I was like, what if you did wrestle again? You're older, you're wiser, you're more mature, you've grown up. Like, what if? And I got to a point where I was like, look, because I was going on about it every day in my head, every single day I was rolling over and thinking about it. I said, this is what you're going to do. You're going to find the closest training school, whether it's good, shit, whatever. Find the closest school that you can find. You're going to go to a training session and you're going to know pretty quickly. Either, it's something you did when you were 21 and you've grown out of it and it's stupid, or you're going to go, fuck, I love it. I can't get enough. I went back. That's where I met my business partner, Grayson Reeves, on the first night. We're both quite competitive. So I think that first night we just really blew each other up. And we were doing lots of like cardiovascular drills and some like ego stuff, like on the ropes, like trying to outdo each other. We just absolutely battered each other. And like, I came away from it like it was like a light bulb had gone off in my head, like the great and powerful was had pulled back the curtain, and I was like, oh, this is my calling. Like it was like it was mental. I just knew. I was just like, this is what you're gonna do.
Cool.
And I've been here 7 years now. So
and there we go. So that brings us quite nicely then onto the next bit and sort of Reach Wrestling as an entity. How you talk about where it started, obviously that initial meeting with Grayson Reeves obviously set it in motion, but where did you go from there? When did you make a decision that you wanted to put something together that was yours and, see where it went?
So I wrestled all over the south of England for a few years, like started to build up my name a little bit and get, more on the circuit and everything. Like became, I would probably say, quite respected for the way that I wrestle. I don't think perhaps I ever quite got to the, I certainly didn't get those Doug Williams heights. In my mind, I was like, that's where you're going to get to. I don't think it ever quite happened. But I think I was at least respected enough to be seen as someone that could, what we call work, or a good hand, I guess, someone that was, at a certain level that you knew you were going to be okay. You're going to have a good night if you're against me on the card, I guess is probably how I never got any grief from anybody. I never got any, nothing like that. And I felt like, okay, things are getting good. And I went on for a few years and if I'm being, no lies is my rules. I don't ever lie. So sometimes I'll say things people don't want to hear, but it's the reality of the situation. I looked around at what was around at the time and I just thought some of this stuff isn't very good. I was working for companies at the time that I just thought, I think this could be a lot better, little touches. And I would often say to certain people, hey man, you ever thought about trying it like this? And I don't know everything. I just appear to know some stuff that apparently they didn't. So I would look at things and say, like, maybe why don't you ever consider this or perhaps some of this? And often it would fall on deaf ears. And I think a lot of wrestling promoters, I don't know if wrestling, the years have gone by, wrestling for me is not full of deeply insecure people. It's what I thought when I first broke in, because there was so much locker room bitchiness and a lot of, it was like a playground, grown-ass men acting like children. And I would blow my mind. But as the years went by, I learned to surround yourself with the right people in the business. There's some real gems in our business. If you look at the guys and girls that wrestle for Reach Wrestling, we don't have a troublemaker in that locker room. There's not one.
That's good.
So if people ask, who the best wrestlers in the country are, I said, well, take a look at our roster, because they're the ones that are the best inside the ring and out. And that's who we use, is, those that can do this job properly, correctly. And I started to realize over time, well, actually, if I did something like this, and I sort of weighed up my options. And at the time, there was a promoter in Plymouth who was just kind of gone bust pretty much. I had to bail him out a couple of times. And I offered to buy his company off him. He's in a lot of debt. So I offered him £1. I said, I'll give you £1 so you can walk away with a £1. So, and I'll take all your debt on and I'll do everything to fix it for you, right? And politely, you can sort of piss off into the sunset, and at least you can say you made £1. All right. So you made some money. You can tell everybody you made profit in wrestling and let your ego run wild or whatever you need to do. But I'll sort this out for you. In the end, he was like, oh, no, I couldn't sell you the company. And I said to him, dude, you're in some substantial debt here, which is hard to believe since it's an independent wrestling company. Who could you possibly owe money to? Any contracts to anybody? But they said he owed loads of people money. And in the end, I spoke to my friend Grayson, weeks and weeks on the phone, saying to him, man, we should buy this company. And one day he said something to me, just as a passing comment. I bet he regrets it till this day. He said, look, if anything, we should start our own company. And I was like, another one of those, mind-blowing light bulb moments, right? I was like, oh shit, that's it. and he's like, anyway, as I was saying, I'm like, no, hold on. We should start our own company. He's like, no, I'm a wrestler. I'm not promoted. I was stupid. But for me, the seed was sown. Yeah. I knew what had to be done, and it took a little while, but I got him in the end. I convinced him in the end, and 3.5 years later, we're here now.
Awesome.
That company in the end did go bust in Plymouth. No surprise, obviously. We just kind of took over where they left off, really.
Cool.
But I think some of their guys try to say that we sort of worked together and like we inherited them, and it's not true. We're a complete separate company. Like we started our own. We're on, you can find us for a limited company with, tax registered and everything. Like we're not a 2-bit company full of like carnival folk. That's not what we are. We're trying to run a proper organization.
You can actually say, you took it from the ground up. You didn't have to rely on anyone else to lay the foundations for you, which is amazing. Very, very cool.
It is. And the other thing is, it was our money. See, this is the thing sometimes when people try to tell you how to run your own company. It was our initial investment. And anybody that can say to me, oh, well, I do this, I do that, I always think, well, give me your fucking money. All right, you give me your money, and we'll put your money into this idea and see how much you like the idea then. Because people are very quick to say, oh, you should do more of this and less of this, when it's not their money.
Yeah.
When it's your money that's making the thing come off the ground, just a little bit different. You know what I mean? So I think things like that, the kind of things people forget. You know, everyone's very quick to say, oh, I would have booked this and I'd have booked that. And I think, well, you ain't the one paying the bills. You ain't the one keeping the lights on. So, you know.
Very true. Very true. So when you first started out then, how long did it take to kind of get a team together, to get a roster together, to have your first show, for example? So do you remember what that was, where it was, what happened?
Yeah. But I've told this story a few times on the podcast over the years. Now we ultimately, I convinced him by hounding him, because I'm a pain in the ass, but I hounded him and just sort of said to him, look, I said to him, all I'm saying is, if we just write down, if it was up to me and you, if we just write down like a 5-match card, who we'd want on, all right? Because of all the other companies in the area at the time that booked certain talent, and certain talent would get booked on a Saturday here, but not on a Sunday here because they didn't like that promoter, or they'd get booked on a Sunday, not the Saturday. And I just said, what if we had like an all-star kind of cast of the guys and girls around the area? Who would we book? And he says to me, right, put the kettle on and I'll get a pen and paper and, you know, we'll write this thing down. And I just knew I had him, because I knew if he saw it on paper, he wouldn't be able to resist.
Yeah.
So and that was probably I did some work for 4FW in Swindon. And I think that was November time of 2017, I think it was. We started, 17. And then we had a trip booked to America to watch Royal Rumble in January 2018.
Okay, cool.
And we managed to get everything done just before that. So we had a card set and everything, and you know, we'd contacted people from the page and sort of put out enough feelers so that we knew wrestlers would contact us. So it made it easier for us to get hold of the guys we wanted by basically kind of just posting stuff, and wrestlers are pretty quick to jump in your inbox when they think there's a bit of money going. So I don't, you know, that's what a self-employed person does, which I understand. So we just knew, because we're wrestlers too, so we knew how it worked. So we knew that as soon as we started putting feelers out that a new company was about, we'd get an import. And luckily, 9 out of 10 guys and girls that we wanted, sort of, I think we had to contact maybe 1 or 2 tops to say, listen, the truth is, like, behind closed doors, because we wanted to keep it quiet, right? We were like, look, we're the guys that are running the show. Don't tell anybody. Just you know, or we get their email addresses from their Twitters and contact them, and still trying to keep it quiet, right? But we had our first show July 18, but we were ready to go probably March, April. We were like, okay, we're ready, let's do it. And then we were like, no, we've booked July. But we were diligent. I mean, like, again, people say things like, oh, you guys got lucky. Do you know how hard we worked? We used to have to leave our phone on loud, right? We would leave our phone on loud, and the agreement was, if we call, we must answer, no matter what, because it could be something business related. So when we first set the business up, we were so conscious that we didn't know what we were doing. We'd call each other at 3 o'clock in the morning. You know, the phone would be vibrating. And oh no, hello. Come up with a great idea. You'd be like, I can't sleep. You know what I mean? And like, that's how it was for about 6 months. The first 6 months of running the company, and we were just diligent. We were just 2 guys that loved pro wrestling, and just worked our asses off to really bring something that we wanted to be proud of it. We wanted to be proud and say, this is our version of professional wrestling. This is what we believe it should be. And, you know, here we are, you know.
Yeah. And it's, seeing, I've been following quite a few, you know, in British indie promotions. I've been amazed at how many are still popping up, and, you know, some are doing some fantastic things. And it's great to have something so established, I feel, down this neck of the woods. Because one of the reasons, I guess, that it'd been so long in between me going to see shows down there is that I didn't really realize what was going on, because it all went a bit quiet. And, you know, once I started looking, I didn't have to look very hard. So you guys, you're based, is it Plymouth or Exeter? You're Plymouth. So you're broken ground over in Cornwall as well. Is it sort of mainly Devon and Cornwall that you sort of hold your shows, or have you gone any further?
Yes, so at the moment, our regular shows are Plymouth, Exeter, Tavistock, and we used to have Bodmin, but Bodmin jail closed down for some refurbishment work. So now it's It's a shame, man. It was a great venue, fantastic venue. Crowd were up above you and all around you, just on you, and the sound stayed in the venue. It was a fucking amazing venue. Amazing. But we just put St. Austell, the Key Theatre in St. Austell, which is a lovely venue. So we're now November 13th will be our first show in St. Austell. So Devon is primarily where we run. So we've got Plymouth, Exeter, and Tavistock. Mm-hmm. And we looked at going to like the Torbay area, Torquay, Newton Abbot, that kind of thing. We maybe still will. I know there's another company called CSF. They seem to be good people. I've only ever heard good things about those guys. I think they're in Paynton, somewhere like that. So I think they're going to use a few of our guys too. So to me, it doesn't matter to me if they've been running, I think someone said 20 years and they've got a good reputation. So it doesn't bother me. If the wrestling's good, I'm happy. Yeah. Because my thing is always that if somebody comes to a wrestling show and it's not branded very well and they just see wrestling and the wrestling show is shit or unprofessional, what happens then is they switch off and say, I'm not watching that wrestling. And then when we come to town and say, oh, we're bringing a show in, they say, oh, I've seen that wrestling, it's crap. Yeah. Then I have to say, well, no, you haven't seen our wrestling. And it's very hard to pull somebody back. Yeah. And I think the CSF guys are really good. They book a lot of good talent. So I know they're in the Devon area, but I think we've got another company, Cornish Pro Wrestling, down in Cornwall. But other than those two, I think it's just us really. We Tavistock, Exeter, and Plymouth are the three we run, and St. Austell. Just trying to think where else we're looking to go. Taunton, we've looked at Taunton, which is 30 miles up the road from Exeter, which I think is in Somerset. So we've considered that. We've got a venue we're looking at over in Dorset, but again, we're friends with the guys at UPW, Ultimate Pro Wrestling, so we wouldn't go we wouldn't go to Weymouth and places like that where they run, because it's just, I think you build a good working relationship with people over the years that you can trust, that you know are honest, that you know put on good wrestling shows, and then they're making the business stronger than being there. I think it's important to have, they're not even really competition. It's more just having people that you can turn to and say, listen, you're running Dorset and we're running Devon and those guys are running Cornwall. If you get an ex-WWE guy, suddenly gets his release and comes over, well, if they run the Friday, we run the Saturday and they run the Sunday, what stops that guy getting 3 bookings and us all getting a WWE guy? Do you know what I mean? So if you can work together in that fashion, if you look at it like that, it's good business for everybody. The fans get the chance to see these guys 3 times then.
Yeah, that's cool. No, I can fully understand that. Is UPW, was that used to be or have anything to do with what was big league wrestling? Do you remember?
Yeah, so my understanding with those guys, so I knew Lewis and Mark, I know well, and he's a good guy. Those two did like a war, right? So they've done a war, and from my understanding, the way I know I worked for UPW for years, but I've not been there since starting Reach really, or a couple of times, but not in years. But my understanding is that UPW, I think, won the war, which was good for the fans. From what the fans have told me, it was really good because I think both brands were strong. And I think that ultimately, I think everybody expected Big League to win. But when UPW won, it's kind of a nice swerve, right? So now, if I understand it right, UPW have got like the Big League title on their shows, and they've kind of taken on like the history of the Big League. I guess they got the tag titles and things like that. Okay. But I think it was it was done well, because I think it ended Big League the right way. I don't think Big League, from what I understand, came out of it looking bad, which is right. And I think UPW came out of it looking stronger. So I think it was done well, to be honest. It kind of like, when WCW came to WWE. Yeah. Everybody shits on that thing they did. Depending whether you think it was good or bad. I think the difference was, I'm not comparing the scales, but at least at this level it was done right, I think is what I would probably say. I've
got another 2 or 3 hour show up my sleeve about the invasion and what went wrong, because I'm very passionate about that. Yeah, I only thought that because I remember when Big League popped up, it was around about the time I think that I saw Pro Wrestling Pride, and all these top guys, all these ex-WWE guys were coming down this way, and they had Alberto Del Rio and Mr. Kennedy and MVP and that. I was like, whoa, I'm in Newton Abbot, so going up to Yeovil where they were based, I think at the time, isn't all that much of a trip, No, not at all. But so there you go. I'm Newton Abbot, so if you are ever up this way, or if you're ever thinking about coming up this way,
for sure. We consider Newton Abbot. I would run Newton Abbot for sure. 100%. I would run a show at Newton Abbot.
So one thing I love about you guys as well is you grow your own talent as well. In a way, you've got your Reach Academy. Tell us about that, and tell us about some of the guys that have sort of gone through or that are there now that are looking to be, sort of big stars in the future in your eyes.
So one of the things for us that we knew had to be done was you needed to bring through new talent. So the Southwest in general, when I first broke in, the feeling was you got to go north. If you don't go north, you can't make it in this country. Can't make good money out of wrestling if you don't go north. I heard if I had £1 for every fucking time I was told I had to go north. I'm from the South. I lived in Exeter and I've moved to Plymouth even further south. And I love the South. I love it here. It's my favorite part of the country. They talk funny in the north and I don't want to go up there. I'm just kidding. But I don't want to go up there unless I really have to, right? Like, it's nothing against them. It's just such a long fucking way. It's a long ass way to go when you live in Exeter or you live in Plymouth. So my mind was always, why can't we have it here? So the first thing you had to look at was talent. You had to say to yourself, is the talent here? Is there enough talent? Is the quality of talent good enough so that we can compete with anybody in the country or build something here? Because yes, there was Pride and there was DWA and there was LEP, but none of these companies, Pride did well, but then the ass fell out. So we needed to, big league, same thing, the ass fell out of that too. So you needed something sustainable. And I was like, okay, well, the only way you will have something sustainable is if you find, if there are any stars, real stars in this part of the country. Then what you need is to bring through tomorrow's stars, to hang with these stars eventually. So when these guys move on, we got new ones. That's, to me, is common sense, right? And I got no business to that. To me is common sense. And so we looked, and you've got, let's start with the guys, Joe Redmond is around the corner, and he's probably the most knowledgeable wrestler in the country. Joe Redmond's just had a match with Doug Williams, and I think the right choice. Joe, won the match, and I think it was kind of a passing of the torch to say that Doug was the man. But the man now is the man that beat Doug. He's the man in this country, and I just debate it with anybody. I debate with anybody, in British wrestling. If Joe Redmond's not the man, then show me who is. And that's coming from me. I'm telling you, I'm the man. I don't know the bollocks. I'm no Joe Redmond. No one's a Joe Redmond. There's one Joe Redmond. He is. There's only one of him. You saw him, right?
I did. Yeah, it was. I've used the term when I posted about Masterclass. It really was. It was a fantastic match to watch. It was lovely. And you're right. Yeah, I felt perfect ending with it. Exactly. Yeah. It
was a great contest, right? And so Joe, you got Joe Redmond. Then I looked a little further. PJ Jones, who's one of the most unsung guys we got. Josh Knott, country big. Josh Knott just needed that extra push, right? Which we were one of the first companies to give him to really put the spotlight on him and say, have you seen this guy? Grayson Reeves is my buddy, and I tell him all the time he can main event shows, but he just doesn't put himself out there, not at all. But if you ever watch one of his matches, he's spot on. Never puts a foot wrong. Never puts a foot wrong. And yet no one sings his praises because he don't sing his own praises. In our business, you got to hype yourself on the Twitters and Instagram and all that shit, and you don't do it. So I was like, well, okay. I was like, he's there. So that's three guys. It was the same. You got it was at the time called Dick Riley. It's Nick Riley now. It's another one. Charlie Sterling was just up the road. Brendan White and Bino were in Wales, Dragon Pro, and I was like, a couple of hours up the road. 2 hours, two and a half hours up the road. Jason King, that's me. And I was here, and I was like, well, I know I'm pretty good at this job. And I'm like, well, that's 6 or 7 of us, right? And I'm thinking, and there's others that, but I was like, well, that's 6 or 7 guys. Straight away, I was like, okay, we can probably bring in, or Eddie Ryan. He's going to fucking have a go at me for that. We'll fall out over that. You'll have Eddie Ryan. He's right here on our doorstep, living in Plymouth, where we were based. That's 8 guys. And I'm just like, okay, well, that's 8 people. We can, rotate and bring in a few others, but that's 8 to start with right away that I know can do this job. And I know with the right sort of push and the right sort of advertisement can really, really make something here. We just never put them all together. You know what I mean? Different companies might book 2 or 3 of them, but never, and so then we started a training school. And I think for the first year, nobody really was ready. We were only training once a week at the time, but then we got a full-time unit, and we were set up so that we could train 3, 4, 5 times a week. So at one point we're doing 7 days a week. I think we're open now we're open 6 days a week at the moment. Most people train 3, 4 times a week, and we knew we needed to bring through new stars, and we needed to bring through, when I say plus the others we bring in, the Lance Coles of the world, and those kind of guys that we bring in externally, and on the occasion, Jody Fleisch, Doug Williams, all these guys that you bring in, Keane the Fox. If I start naming them, I'll be here all night. But all these sort of guys and girls that we bring in to work with our guys, we started to realize, well, we need to make our guys good enough.
Yeah.
They need to be a certain standard to appear on our shows. What we didn't do was ever let one of them off and go, oh, go on, we'll just put you on because we trained you. We were like, okay, that's the standard we're all keeping. And we told them many times, go around the country, look at other shows, see what else is out there, and come back home. Because I knew they would. So we would say, some of it is really good out there, some of it's not so good, but go and see what else is out there. And you'll see the standard that different companies keep. It's different companies got different standards for 1,000 different reasons. But this is our standard, and it will never, ever slip, ever. And so when we started putting our guys and girls on shows, the realization was, you need to hang here now. You're being given the opportunity, which is why the feedback can be harsh if they don't quite cut it. But it's done in a way that's positive criticism.
Yeah,
it's done to say, okay, well, this wasn't or that wasn't, and then we'll get back to class and we'll work on it. So the second time around, it's better than it was the first time.
Yeah.
So that when we leave our mark as Reach Wrestling, in the name of the Reach Academy, those that come through, and I tell them every single time I'm teaching, I tell them every single time, your job is to be better than me. Your job is to be better than Grayson, Eddie Ryan. Be better than us. Because you need to be what's next. We might have been the starting point or the next level up when wrestling in this country started to get a little better because of Reach. You are the next level. So you need to develop further again. So we push them harder than perhaps we were pushed, or are more maybe critical than our coaches were of us. You had a guy called Joey Seven. You would have seen him in the main event at Tavistock. Yeah. Joey's been in the business 18 months and he had a main event like that. Jesus Christ.
Wow.
Like, you know, people think he's like a 10-year pro.
I completely thought that, actually. So
there you go. Wow. 18 months, maybe 2 years tops. He's been in the business. Wow. But here's a guy that, again, he's got a great look, but that'll only get you so far, because you coming in with a load of muscles don't do nothing for me. I need to see a little more than that. And his attitude and his work ethic and his passion, his desire to get better, his desire to constantly get better was there. And he would outwork everybody else. And he would just say, okay, if they're doing 3 reps, I'll do 4. If they were doing 5 reps, and it was always, he'd be the first guy when cleanup was happening. Right. A story I told him once, the reason he was our first Academy champion. I told him, I said, you know the reason why you were the champion? He said, no. I said, it's got nothing to do with how you look. He looks fantastic. Great tan, bright white smile, professional rugby player. But none of that really mattered that much. If behind closed doors he was an asshole, I would have been like, well, no, you're no good, but he's a good guy. At a show one time, I was running around like headless chicken, and I sat down and I was like, whoo, head of my hands, like, what a tough day. And I looked up and he's like sweeping the floor. Wow. He's like sweeping up all the crap. No one had told him to do it. No one had, people were stood around talking. He had the initiative to be like, okay, well, let's get this clean. Yeah. It might sound like a little thing, but that reliability, that moment for me was like, okay, this guy really gets it. Yeah. He's an ex-rugby professional. He could have came in with the attitude of, listen, I'm a proper sportsman. This is beneath me. Exactly. He complete opposite. The complete opposite. Awesome. That day, I went back to my, buddy Grayson. I said, we need an Academy championship. Joey Seven, he needs to win that belt. And he's like, oh, so you think he's good? I was like, there's something about him I like. Yeah. He was the first guy to come through, and you look at him now. I mean, he's works all the camp shows that we do. He wrestles around the south of England. Yeah, very reliable. I'm wrestling him at main event for the Cornish title.
I see that
next month. He's reliable as anybody. That you got another person. He's one of those special talents that just picked it up, but he didn't just pick it up in the ring. He picked it up outside of it. So he ticked a lot of boxes.
That's cool. That's cool. That's very cool. Like you said at the top, that you haven't got any, troublemakers in there. You need someone like that. I would imagine there's a bit of a cornerstone, don't you?
Absolutely, because we've had troublemakers, but we just manage them out the school. There's no dispute. there's no place that we've had guys.
You don't need to tolerate it, do you?
Yeah, and we don't, and we won't. Because at the end of the day, why would you? We won't let one bad apple spoil a bunch.
No.
You know what I mean? Everybody's got imperfections. Me, you, everybody. All of us. Nobody's perfect. Perfect doesn't really exist. It's a word we use, but don't really exist in anything. But if you're chasing that perfection, you spend your whole life running around in a bleeding hamster wheel. But if you can be the best you that you can be, fine. That's what I'm looking for. Is the most effort, the most energy that you can give to that training session, that match, that moment. And that's what we try to bring out of people, is what is the best you can give me in that moment, in that day, in that session, in that sequence in the ring, in that moment, in that promo. And I think our job is to bring it out of people. And Joey 7 was another one's LA Taylor. If you see LA Taylor, I mean, man, you want to talk star quality. I met, at LA down in Cornwall some years ago. I took a seminar down there and for another company, and she was, I don't think she'd mind me saying, maybe she will, tough shit. She was not in ring shape, not at all. She was not. And she did not have that presence she's got now. She was just someone that just was like, I just want to be a wrestler, really. Kind of like, yeah, I just really would like to try it. You see her now, shit. Like, gee, there's no bigger star in women's wrestling in this country.
She did own the place, I must admit, as soon as she came.
Mate, there, so. You ain't arguing with her. You know what I mean? You're like, when she's pacing up and down backstage, everyone's like, get out of her way. Like, even I'm like, okay, don't look at her. Like, she's in her moment, man. You're like, let her do her thing. Yeah. Because the thing is, when you get like special talent, sometimes you just got to let them have that moment. You just got to let them go a little bit and say, okay, just let them do their thing. Because then she creates magic in front of the camera, in front of the punters. And you're like, well, you got to let them go. Yeah. Our champion now, Jordan Sparks, he's a young man that came in. He was skinny, pale. He had a shitty haircut the day he came in. There was a silly NWO t-shirt on. He took a bump one time in the ring, and I said, have you done this before? And he was like, I just really love wrestling. I was like, okay, I'm a super fan, right? Look at him now. Yeah. You know, he's another one. Just sponge for feedback. Just a constant sponge. Always asking how to improve. Sends me voice messages. I'm thinking in our next match, why don't we do this? Lays out an entire match to me, just in a voice message. No, actually, let's do this. I'm thinking maybe we'll put that in there. And I'm like, oh, fucking hell. Here's another guy. Been training a year, just over a year, you know. Echo Reed, who wrestled LA Taylor. You know, there's a girl that was dead quiet on day one. Didn't say boo to a goose. Just super quiet, super shy. You see her 2 years later. She's known, right? If we're doing the ring one day, if we're changing the rings over, we've got 2 wrestling rings. Right. If we're changing the rings over, she's like 5'4", right? And probably weighs about 9 stone. If we're doing ring day and you're being lazy, it's not me that's going to tell you off. It's not Grayson Reeves. It's not Joey 7 or the biggest guy in the locker room, Victor Brady or Jacob Kittle. It's her. She's going to march up to you. I'm getting goosebumps, like, because I've seen it so many times. She march up to you, call you names I won't repeat on this podcast. Grown-ass men are jumping like, it's not sweeping the floor or picking up a bar. You just see these people, Aurora, I think she's a natural performer. She's someone that struggled with confidence in the ring to start with. God, you look at her now. We just take the Unit 10 for our YouTube. You wait till you see that tag team main event. Jordan Sparks and Aurora versus Joe Costa and Ruby. You just won't believe. You won't believe your eyes. Cool. You won't believe your eyes. And these 4 have been in the business, combined time between them less than 5 years. You won't believe your eyes. And it's magic to me to see it. I'm like a proud dad. I'm like a proud father.
And you can tell. And you can tell, which is brilliant. You know, it's. I mean, I think there's this misconception with, I think, coming from, you know, the Mr. McMahon character. You can have a guy who runs a company who's involved in it himself. He's always going to do something to put himself up there, and you don't get that really. I wasn't sure when I came along, sort of what your role was in that respect. But you're quite clearly, you know, yes, you're out there to entertain, but you're not stifling everyone else. You know, you're giving everyone else the chance to grow, which is brilliant.
No, do you know something? I think you're right. Misconception is probably the right word, because often I think people will say things like, "Oh, you know, perhaps he's on top because of this, or he is," because if you could find one person, even one, that could speak up and say, "Oh, Jason, stole this spot from me, put me down, didn't give me," I'd love to hear it. I'd love to be on a podcast with them and say, you know, tell me what I did. Did I stunt your growth? Because it just don't exist. No. It's not productive. And again, if we're breaking this down, putting somebody else down that we've trained, that we've taught, we've tried to build up, who does that actually help? And if anybody truly believes in their heart that my ego is that fragile, that somebody pays us a load of not just money, but time, effort, and energy to come to our school to be a better professional wrestler, and we just go in and bury them to make ourselves feel big, then come on. Like, I think that person needs to look in the mirror and ask themselves, how are you coming up with that stuff? Because our goal is to bring through the Joey Sevens, the LA Taylors, the Auroras, Echo Reeds, Jordan Sparks, Joe Costa, Carl Parker, Toby Valentine. These people, David Lucky. These are the people that are trying to come through now. Victor Brady. There's so many of them. I could go on for hours about these guys and girls because their passion is real. Yeah. We have hard nights. We have hard times at training sometimes where things go wrong and I lose my temper and I set everybody down and and I'm having one of those almost like father kid pep talks, and I'm looking around the room kind of saying, do you really want this? Because I'm not wasting any more of my time. And it's like there's an energy. But if you speak to maybe more of guys in school or energy that we have that makes what we do very special because everybody very quickly gets on the same page and understands the bigger picture. We have a locker room full of students that I don't have to police anymore. It's at a point now we got locker room leaders, Victor Brady, Joey Seven, Ellie Taylor. If you're messing around, Echo Reed, if you're messing around, you don't have to answer to me anymore. You answer to them. and if you don't fit in, or if you're not falling in line with what the company objective is, essentially, you'll be managed out and it won't be me that has to do it. And it's not to say that it's not done through bullying. It's not done through hazing. I don't like that stuff. We don't do that stuff. We don't haze people. We don't bully people. We simply set out. These are objectives. You can expectations, my friend. You're spot on. And at the end of the day, we cater to all different types of people, all different kinds. People that are coming with no athletic experience, no wrestling experience, just saw a poster on the door they liked the color of and came in. From people that have trained before for years, couldn't quite get what they were looking for. We take in people we get students from all around the world, student from New Zealand, student from Hong Kong, students from Canada, students from all around the United Kingdom. And it's male, female, it didn't matter. Doesn't matter. There's no judgment. Nobody cares. It's just one goal is to make you a more competent and a more professional wrestler. Is the objective. And I think success, if I'm going to break my arm, pat myself on the back, but it's not just me, it's a team of people, but the success at this stage, at this level, speaks for itself.
You can cut that bit you've just done there, wrap it up. You've got a hell of an advert there for Reach Wrestling and the Reach Academy.
That's very kind.
I don't think you need to say anything more. So, just before I start wrapping it up, because unfortunately, I do need to start wrapping it up in a minute. But I've got a few questions that I like to pelt at my guests, and there's one in particular which has become my real favourite because not only do I get to see people squirm on the spot, it helps sort of for me to tap into your inner fan. Everyone in their minds, they will argue about who should be on the wrestling Mount Rushmore. Who would be on yours? This doesn't have to necessarily be who's most important to the industry or whatever, but who to you, if you could make your own Mount Rushmore of wrestling?
Oh man, wow.
I should have sent this over ahead of time to make you aware, but I quite like the inner turmoil that goes on.
So hard. Do you know it's hard because oh god, you could oh god, what a question. I should have known something like that was coming. It's so many this. So you could look at you could say well, you got to look at the best world champions, right? Or not even the best world champions, but those that drew the big money in their time. So George Wagner, Gorgeous George, you could put on there, and then Bruno Sammartino for selling out the Garden 100 odd times. And then you'd have to put in Stone Cold Steve Austin, Hulk Hogan, right? But then you could say, well, okay, that's those four, but how do you leave out Ric Flair as the greatest world champion of all time? And as much as people don't like him, you can't leave out John Cena's success in WWE. He kept WWE relevant at a time when there wasn't a lot of relevance. So how can you ignore his success? And then of course you've got to go down the route of the NWA guys. You've got to say, well, can you leave out Lou Thesz and Harley Race? And one's an 8-time world champion. Brian Gagne, an ex-Olympian who won 10 world titles. Can you leave him out? And then you say that, how can you leave The Rock out? You can't leave The Rock out. The Attitude Era is the most successful, financially successful period of time wrestling's had. Then surely it has to be The Undertaker, Rock, Austin, and Triple H if they're the top four of that era. Yeah. Right? So the answer is I don't fucking know. I don't know.
I think that explanation is worth it anyway. I think that's brilliant. You couldn't have done better than that in a sense. But no, that's fair enough. You're the first guy to actually turn around and say, I ain't got a clue. So
who do you say? What's your thought?
And this is what I said to one of my guests the other night. Cruelly enough, I will send this question, but I would have just as hard a time. I think for me, you know, in the era I grew up with, and what's most important to me, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, they were the guys that I idolized as a kid. Steve Austin, I guess, for turning, even though I kind of dipped out at the end of the Attitude Era, you can't help but notice how he turned around when WCW were trampling all over him.
Yes.
You know, he sort of turned the business in another direction. I guess I would have to have Hulk Hogan up there because of not necessarily the 80s and that, yes, wrestling became a whole new entity with him there. I think the NWO bit,
good longevity.
Those couple of years, you know, Hulk Hogan and Steve Austin over those few years, I think both just turn the direction of it. So, you know, for me, that's just during my sort of lifetime. And
not a bad four. So you brought to another point there, because like you say, Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, in theory, if we talk about like in-ring work, you got Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, Eddie Guerrero, Kurt Angle. Yeah. You could pick those four, right? So that is a question I think that could go on for, I don't know if it's ever got an answer. You know what I mean?
I don't think. I love sitting back in some of these Facebook groups that I used to be in, and people would just debate it all along as if it was an absolute. And I was just sat there thinking, well, everyone's just got their opinion, you know, and I'm intrigued. So thank you for that. That's amazing. Listen, for the last couple of minutes, do tell everyone firstly where they can find out more about Reach Wrestling, where they can see you, the shows you got coming up, where you are on social media. Just plug away.
For sure. So we Reach Wrestling, if you look us up, you'll find us on Google. We'll come up. First search is us. We're based in Plymouth, Mary C. Cole Road. We've got a training facility, the Reach Academy. It's in Plymouth. And I would say to anybody that listens to this, if you're a wrestling fan, believe me, please. My rule number one as a grown-ass man is no lies. I will not lie to you now. I wouldn't just change that for a podcast. You really do not know what you can achieve unless you try. And wrestling brings out of you something that maybe you didn't even know you got in there. That's my job. It's my colleagues. It's our job to bring out something inside you that perhaps you don't know is there. Give wrestling a try. Even if you only try one time, give it a try and see what you can achieve. You probably blow your mind with what you can achieve if you try. Wrestling is hard. It is hard work. But the you that walks in on day one is not the you in 3 months' time, 6 months' time, 12 months' time. It's a commitment. But the camaraderie you build with the people in that school, if you're the kind of person that sits at home day in, day out, it's got nothing ready to live for, and you're going through a tough time, believe me, you're going to meet like-minded people that have found something special in a special place where they're around a family of people that will support you moment, day in, day out, every moment. And just what we do, because that's what family does. We created something special, and it's not just my work and Grayson's work, it's everybody's work. I'd say come down, give it a try. The worst you're going to do is spend, what does it cost for an open day? 20 quid. The worst you're going to do is spend 20 quid one time, right? That's what you'd spend on Domino's pizza anyway. It's overpriced Domino's pizza. Come down, try a little bit of exercise. If you really, really don't like it, go buy the pizza and drown your sorrow. You know what I mean? What's the worst you can do? You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on the Patreon. You can find us on Facebook, Reach Academy and Reach Wrestling. All right. We're free on YouTube. Look on YouTube, type in Reach Wrestling. You'll see Unit 10. The shows are free. They're not costing you any money. You can see all that we're about. You can boo my tanned ass and be like, you know, this jackass. You can cheer Joey 7 and watch the girls if that's what you're into, or the guys, whatever you like, man. Like, but ask yourself, what are they doing that you couldn't do? What stops you doing it? What stops you dropping a message on the Reach Academy page, even if you're nervous, and just saying, look, I just want to know if it's something I can do. Just try. Just give it one go. What's the worst going to happen? We've got upcoming shows in St. Austell, November 13th. That's our debut down in St. Austell. December 5th, we return to Plymouth. We've got the big show, the Plymouth Guildhall, on February 26th. That is the Guildhall show. It's our debut in the Plymouth Guildhall. Very, very excited for that one. Yeah. It's going to be a real big one. 500-seater, that one. At this time of the podcast, I think we sold something like 43% of tickets. So we're nearly halfway already. Awesome. That ain't real serious advertising. So bring yourself along. Come see what we do. You know, boo me if you think I'm a jackass, or cheer me if you like that. I don't care. But come along, get involved. Surprise yourself. Believe me, it's coming from experience. I bet I could probably pull something out of you that maybe you didn't know was in there. And all you got to do is take the first step. Drop us a message, retweet us, and whatever you need to do. We'll be on the other end of the phone, just drop us a line, see what you can do.
There you go. Thank you very much. And implore anyone listening to this, again, just to echo, get onto the YouTube, check these guys out, get down to a show. I can say from first-hand experience, it's an amazing night. So Jason King, thank you so much for your time, sir. This has been an absolute pleasure. So hopefully I will see you in person again very soon.
Sure.
Thank you for listening to a Nerd to Know Media production.